In this video, I'm going to share this one herb that I use to elevate this potato salad so much that it'll have you sky high when you finish eating it. And we're going to start off by boiling our eggs. I have a 3-quart saucepan, and I'm going to add 2 cups of water to the saucepan. And in addition, I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of white distilled vinegar. And we're going to give it a good stir so it's well combined with the water. And once that's done, we're going to move on to adding the eggs to the pot. So I'm adding 3 extra large eggs to the pot, which will go in the salad towards the end. And I'm going to heat these on medium-high heat. Water is boiling. What you're going to do is you're going to cover the pot, and then you're going to let it continue to boil for an additional 12 minutes. And after 12 minutes, the eggs should be good and hard boiled. So we're going to remove the top from the saucepan, turn off the heat, and then we're going to remove the eggs from the saucepan as well. And we're going to remove it using tongs, and we're going to place it in the bowl with some cold water in order to help them stop cooking. And you will want the eggs to sit in the cold water for at least 15 minutes, so that way once you're ready to peel them, they'll be cool to touch. And next we're going to move on to cutting our potatoes. So for this recipe, I will be using 2 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes. 2 pounds should be equivalent to around 6 medium-sized Yukon Gold potatoes. Now the reason I'm using Yukon Gold potatoes is because it's considered an all-purpose potato, and that it still has some creaminess to it due to medium levels of starch, but at the same time it's still able to hold its shape and remain firm compared to the russet potatoes, which are high in starch. So these are the ideal potatoes for potato salad. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut these potatoes into bite-sized chunks, because when you cut them into bite-sized chunks, they have an easier time cooking once you put them in the boiling water. If they're too big, then they'll take a lot longer to cook and they may not cook all the way through. If they're too small, then you risk overcooking them and turning them into mashed potatoes. So the chunks that you see on the screen, that's about the size that you want. And I do recommend using a sharp knife. I'm using a Santoku knife. A chef's knife will work. Some people like to use steak knives because those are readily available, but they tend to be quite dull and that can make it a lot harder to cut the potatoes, and there's a higher risk of cutting yourself with those knives. So what I'm going to do now is bring back over the 3-quart saucepan, which has been cleaned, and I'm going to place the potatoes into the saucepan. And I'm going to give the potatoes a good stir before we move on to the next step in the process, because what we're going to do now is soak the potatoes. And now is 1/3 cups of white distilled vinegar. This will help to brine the potatoes so some of that flavor can get deep into them. And then I'm just going to fill the saucepan with water, just enough to completely cover the potatoes, and we're going to allow them to soak for around 30 minutes or so. In the meantime, while those potatoes are soaking, we're going to circle back around to those boiled eggs. They should be good and cool at this point, so we're going to begin to peel them. Now, this step, you really have to pack your patience. You should take your time with peeling these eggs because you want to be sure that you get all of the eggshells off the eggs, and you don't want to be too aggressive with it because you risk damaging the egg whites if you're too aggressive with peeling these eggs. I sped it up for the sake of this video, but all of the eggshells have been peeled off of the eggs. And what I'm going to do now is take it back over to the sink and rinse any remaining eggshells off, and we should be good to go. That's how your eggs should look. So we're going to set those aside and bring back over our potatoes, which I drained and rinsed off in the sink about 3 to 5 times to clean off any excess dirt and starch. And now I filled the pot with about 7 cups of water. And before we start cooking the potatoes, we're going to want to season the potatoes. So I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of iodized salt to the pot. And once the salt is in there, I'm going to give it a good stir until it's well combined in the water and with the potatoes. Now with potatoes, you always want to heat them up in cold water and bring them to a boil. And that's what we're going to do. So I just turned the knob on my burner to a medium-high heat. And now that the potatoes are boiling, we're going to stir the potatoes, and we're going to keep stirring them occasionally, but we're going to let them continue to cook. And they're going to cook for an additional 12 to 15 minutes. That's around the time it should take for the potatoes to cook. And you want the potatoes to cook until they become fork tender. And I'll show you exactly what I mean in a little bit. But ultimately, you want the potatoes to be firm to touch, but still tender enough for you to pierce a fork through them. So what I'm going to do now is remove the potatoes from the heat, and we're going to drain the potatoes. So I have my colander here, and under it I have a bowl, and I'm just going to pour the potatoes with the water into the colander. You can certainly do this in the sink too. I just didn't feel like moving the camera over there. I was being lazy. Just stirring them around to get some of that water out of there. And you see how easily that fork pierced into that potato? That's exactly how your potatoes should be. If the potato falls apart, that means they're overcooked. If you're struggling with piercing the fork through the potato, that means it's undercooked. So I'm just giving it a good shake to get rid of any remaining water that's in the colander. And then we're just going to allow the potatoes to cool at room temperature for around 30 to 45 minutes. And while that's happening, we're going to move on to making our dressing. So I have a small bowl here. What I'm adding now is 1/2 cup of mayonnaise. This will help to bind all the ingredients together as well as prevent the salad from drying out. And next we're going to add 1/2 cup of sour cream. And before y'all come at me in the comments, believe it or not, the sour cream really helps to mellow out the richness of the mayonnaise. So I would say don't knock it until you try it. And once we get all of that in there, we're going to move on to adding our next ingredient, which is 1/4 cup of sweet relish. Now the sweet relish, as the name implies, it will help to counteract some of the acidity in the vinegar and mustard that we're using. Speaking of vinegar, I just added 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Now I'm adding 2 tablespoons of yellow mustard as well. The yellow mustard is what gives the potato salad its color, whereas the vinegar is what gives the potato salad its signature tang. The reason I used apple cider vinegar is because it is milder than white distilled vinegar. Thus, the vinegary taste is not as strong or intense as what you would get with the white distilled vinegar. So I just finished mixing all the ingredients together until well combined, and now we're going to move on to the next step. Now, a lot of folks will just chop up their eggs with a knife, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I personally believe in working smart and not hard. So I purchased this gadget that you see at Walmart for about $12. I think the brand is OXO, if I'm not mistaken. But you see how cleanly it slices that egg. I'm just going to flip it around to the other side, and I'm going to slice it one more time, and see, we have perfectly diced eggs. It's that easy. And what I'm going to do is place that egg into a small bowl. Just going to dump it in there. And what I'm going to do before I finish dicing the other eggs is use a fork to break up the eggs so they're in little small chunks. I'm going to set that aside, and then I'm going to finish slicing and dicing the rest of the eggs. So I'm just going to repeat the same steps that I just showed you. And I'm going to place that in the bowl, and again break it up with the fork until they're in small chunks. And once that's done, I'm just going to set the eggs aside, and then I'm going to bring over my 3-quart mixing bowl, and into this bowl I'm going to add the potatoes. So at this point in the video, about 30 minutes have passed, so I'm just going to dump those potatoes into the bowl. I'm going to give them a bit of a stir in order to break them up some. And once that's done, I'm going to add the eggs that you just saw a little while ago. Just going to dump those in there, and I'm going to make sure we get all of those in there and we don't leave any behind in the bowl. And once that's done, we're going to give everything a good stir until it's well combined. And then once everything is well combined, we're going to move on to the next step. Now we're going to add in our dressing. So we're just going to pour that dressing into the bowl. And we're going to be sure to get it all in there and not leave any behind. And once we get all of that dressing in the bowl, we're going to set the small bowl aside and just give it all a good stir again until it's well combined. And once everything is well combined, we're going to move on to the next step. Now, no one enjoys eating bland potato salad, at least I don't. So we're going to add some seasoning to this potato salad. In the bowl I have salt, black pepper, chives, parsley, tarragon, garlic powder, and onion powder. The exact measurements can be found in the link in the description below. And once that's in the bowl, we're going to give it all a good stir until it's well combined. Now I know someone's going to ask if they use diced celery and onions. Be my guest. I would just recommend omitting the onion powder if you use diced onions. I personally don't care for the texture that it gives to potato salad, but if you do, more power to you. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer the potato salad into a serving bowl. So we're just going to ease the potato salad into the bowl. Unfortunately, I wish I can tell you, but I don't know the exact size of the serving bowl. So you're gonna have to find a bowl and judge with your own eyes whether it's big enough for the potato salad. So now that we have the potato salad in there, we're just gonna garnish it with some paprika in order to make it look pretty. And with that being done, we're gonna move on to the last and final step. With this being a mayonnaise-based potato salad, you want to chill it for the best results. I'm wrapping it in plastic wrap. Aluminum foil works as well. And I'm going to chill it overnight. You want to chill it for a minimum of 4 hours at the very least. And once you chill it, it is ready to serve. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to see more of these recipes, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.